Denzel Washington has starred in a lot of revenge movies, but which are his best? Denzel Washington movies range all the way from acclaimed dramas like Fences to expertly crafted B-movies like Unstoppable. What makes Washington such a special star is how committed he appears in all his movies. Whether it's Malcolm X or action trash like The Book of Eli, he never phones it in. While he used to jump around genres during the 1990s, from the 2000s onwards, Washington began to lean toward action movies and thrillers. He was a natural fit for both genres, and his presence alone classed up programmers like Two Guns. The best Denzel Washington action movies also tend to see his characters seeking revenge in some form. The Equalizer movies are the clearest examples, but if a Denzel film wants to give the story more dramatic weight, having him seek vengeance for something is an easy way of doing so. Safe House, 2012. Safe House is an odd mix of gritty thriller and mismatched buddy comedy, as Denzel's rogue CIA operative teams with Ryan Reynolds' rookie agent. It's a diverting if somewhat forgettable experience, but it's given dramatic heft by the arc of Washington's Frost. While initially appearing to be a bad guy, Safe House reveals that Washington's Frost is gaining revenge against corrupt elements within the CIA for their misdeeds. This reframes his actions, and the character just about earns his redemption in the surprisingly poignant finale. Overall, Safe House is far from either Washington's or Reynolds' best action movie. Even so, it's an easy Wednesday night watch. Virtuosity, 1995. Denzel Washington as Barnes firing a gun at SID in Virtuosity. Virtuosity was one of Washington's paycheck roles during the 1990s, where he committed to making several films for the money involved. The film is a gloriously dated and garish riff on The Terminator, where Washington's disgraced ex-cop is released to stop an unstoppable android, played by Russell Crowe. The story is given more stakes during the third act, when Washington's Parker learns that the serial killer who murdered his family is living within the android's mind. Virtuosity is pure hokum, a hollow sci-fi actioner that glosses over its plot holes with noisy action. Even so, having thespians like Washington and Crowe gives Virtuosity an unlikely air of classiness. They were put to better use 13 years later when they reunited for Ridley Scott's American Gangster. The Magnificent Seven, 2016. Denzel Washington pointing a gun in The Magnificent Seven. Washington has collaborated many times with director Antoine Fuqua, who knows how to play to his leading man's strengths. In this updating of the classic Western saga, Washington plays a lawman who leads the titular group against the vicious land baron, Bogue, Peter Sarsgaard. While more than one character is seeking vengeance on Bogue, it turns out Washington's Chisholm has a very personal score to settle with the chief villain. Years earlier, soldiers led by Bogue killed Chisholm's family, with the final showdown of the Magnificent Seven seeing the latter confronting Bogue about his actions. It's ultimately a small subplot in an overcrowded movie, but letting Washington switch on Chisholm's righteous anger for a scene was a smart choice. Needless to say, the remake ends with Chisholm's quest for vengeance being satisfied. The Equalizer 2, 2018. Denzel Washington as McCall standing in a hurricane in The Equalizer 2. The Equalizer is Washington's first, and only, franchise, and is based on the 1980s TV series. This sequel is fittingly pretty episodic in nature, where Washington's McCall helps out various people in need while looking into the death of his former partner. The latter plotline is the backbone of the movie, but it does lead to the epic moment where McCall openly declares war on the men behind the killing right in front of them. It all climaxes in an abandoned town during a hurricane, which is the most visually arresting set piece of the series. The Equalizer 2 is not the strongest entry in the Denzel revenge movie canon, but it earns an extra star due to his work. He gives McCall a particularly brutal edge during the sequel, where he is placid one moment before launching into brutal action the next. The Equalizer 3, 2023. Denzel Washington as Robert McCall leaning on his clasped hands in The Equalizer 3. Originally billed as the finale of the Equalizer saga, this third misadventure finds a wounded McCall sheltering in a lovely Italian village. He has one eye on retiring there, until a brutal gang of mobsters terrorizing the locals sees the former DIA agent employing his equalizing ways again. The Equalizer 3 is the least action-packed outing, with McCall spending a good chunk of the runtime just sitting down. Even then, Washington projects a power and authority few other actors can convey, and the nastiness of the villains builds up to the point viewers can't wait to see McCall unleash hell. He does just that in the borderline slasher film finale, but while the revenge is satisfying, it's interesting that the story seems to echo McCall's own weariness. McCall wants to walk away from bloodshed and is essentially forced back into it, with the Equalizer 3 seeing its lead almost pitying the bad guys for messing with him. Fallen, 1998. Denzel Washington and Embeth Davidtz in Fallen, 1998. Washington's only true horror movie is this 1990s gem, where he plays a cop chasing a demonic entity that can change bodies via touch. In a similar way to Ricochet, the movie's villain takes delight in taunting Washington's character and setting him up for a fall. It seems impossible that Washington's Hobbs can even stop this being, dubbed Azazel, but when it kills his brother, the detective sets up a quite ingenious revenge scheme. This forms the finale of Fallen, where Washington gets to chew the scenery as he lays out his revenge plan. Fallen really embraces its genre roots when a rug pull twist cruelly snatches away what looks like a sure victory. It's not nearly as viscerally satisfying a revenge-o-matic as The Equalizers, but it still belongs to the genre. Ricochet, 1991. Denzel Washington pointing a gun in Ricochet. Ricochet is a stealth spin-off to Die Hard, and one of the meanest films released by a major studio during the 1990s. After making his career taking down a killer named Blake, John Lithgow, Washington's hotshot assistant district attorney Stiles sees his life being dismantled when Blake seeks payback. Blake's scheme involves making Stiles look as bad as possible, framing him for various misdeeds and even subjecting him to a harrowing kidnapping. Ricochet is a lurid little thriller, but director Russell Mulcahy wisely injects it with enough humor to balance things out. Having had his perfect little life blown up, Ricochet's third act sees Stiles turn the tables on Blake and proving his own innocence. It's one of Denzel's more forgotten efforts, but it's absolutely worth seeking out.